May I begin by asking Ms. Ram Logan, who is the Deputy Acting Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, to make an opening statement.
Good morning, Chair, esteemed members of the committee, and our viewing public. The Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government would like to thank you for this opportunity to participate in the inquiry into the waste management policies and initiatives of the state, as we all seek to determine the effectiveness of the existing regulatory, administrative, and institutional framework for solid waste management. It has been established by previous submissions to this esteemed committee that the administration framework for waste management in Trinidad and Tobago is complex, spreading across 4 ministries, namely the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Public Utilities, Ministry of Planning and the Environment, and Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government. Of course, we also have one state liability company, SWIMGUL, one statutory authority, the EMA, and the THA, all having responsibility for waste management. So you can just imagine, in terms of the delineation of function and in terms of lead responsibility for waste management in the country. It is expected that through our collaborative efforts here today, we can identify the existing gaps, deficiencies, and constraints which can inform the recommendation required to improve the governance structure, policies, systems, and processes of solid waste management for the health and well-being of all our citizens, the protection and preservation of our natural environment, and the optimization of our financial and human resources. Thank you.
Parties are supposed to direct their questions through the chair, and similarly, you direct your answers through the chair. So I now invite members who may have questions. Dr. Francis.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning to our panelists this morning. Chair, through you, Madam Permsec, I will start with you. Good morning again. You've stated the truth, which is that we have a intertwined waste management system in this country. For the sake of the viewing public, what is the role of your ministry in this?
Presently, the role of our ministry is reduced to collection only. Solid Waste Management Company has been moved to the Ministry of Public Utilities. When they were previously under the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, we were responsible for the management and development of landfills. Thank you.
And just for clarification, all of the collection is done through the regional corporations, the cities, and the boroughs?
Presently, yes.
Okay. All right, so now the substantive question. What kind of oversight is provided by your ministry to ensure that these processes under 14 regional corporations is handled properly? Maybe to make it simpler, do you provide oversight, and then what kind of oversight is provided?
We do the management and oversight of these solid waste management contracts at the regional corporation through the formulation of the contracts and the provisions within the contract. Subsequent to every contract period, we do an evaluation, and based on the outcome of this evaluation, it determines the next terms of reference for the procurement process for those contractors. And at every subsequent opportunity that we do have, we try to introduce measures to improve that system. We could go into it further as we go along
Okay.
to proceed.
How do you evaluate?
we evaluate by feedback from both the citizens and the corporation CEO and the staff at the corporations.
I want to change gears somewhat and deal with the issue of single-use plastics. I know there's a lot of concern, in fact, not in the whole world, about what are we doing about these bottles, like water bottles and so on, that tend to be clogging up just about everywhere, rivers, seas, and so on. Are any of the corporations taking initiatives on their own to deal with the single-use plastics, or is it that you sit back and wait for a national policy to be implemented? Any of the corporations can answer.
Good morning. Madam Chairman, members of the committee. So I would just like to say that the Tunapuna Piako Regional Corporation did attempt an initiative in 2016 for a 6-month period where we did do some segregation of waste. We rolled it out in a few communities. It was successful in one particular area, Trin-City, for example. But we found that it was not quite sustainable. So the corporation sees it as it's important, because what we're discussing here this morning is that sustainability in terms of garbage collection, right? Garbage collection shouldn't really be seen as just garbage itself. We have to look at the implications in terms of going forward. And as Dr. Henry rightly said, plastics is something in the environment. We have to look at long term. This is something that is not going to just degrade on its own. So I think the corporations really have to, should look at initiatives, continuing initiatives. And what I'm pleased about really is that we're looking at it now through this forum on a national perspective. So it should be a holistic approach, really.
Dr. Henry, if I may add to that, the TPRC has also engaged University of the Western Indies on 2 other initiatives, one being the use of crumb rubber in paving, so much so that we've engaged a contractor and the university under Dr. Ford, and I forgot the other professor's name, Dr. Ford in chemistry, but they're looking at an international already used solution and adapting the mix to Trinidad space together with a contractor in an attempt to try to use it on 2 roads within this fiscal year, and then see if we could replicate it in other spaces. We've also had we've had one cement company who has indicated to us that they would like to speak to us about the use of plastic and concrete and cement in creating, doing paving in rural spaces. We also intend to explore that. And our own PHO, Ms. Ribeiro, who is seated behind me, has engaged a lot of the staff in ways that are innovative to see if we could reuse tires on the compound for simple things like tables and chairs, and that we could use in our own grounds and spaces. So we have looked at some recycling initiatives in our space.
Thank you. Dr. Henry, you have another question?
No, because the gist of my question is also to urge the corporations not to wait on a national policy. And I mean, I like the initiatives that I heard, but I think there needs to be more of that, instead of just waiting for the central government to declare a bill or law or whatever to deal with this issue, because I think it's something that is very critical. And as I said, it's not only in Trinidad and Tobago, it's all over the world that this, and most of the time you read about plastics being banned or being prescribed in any particular way. It's usually done at the local level. Eh? It's at the local level. It's hardly done at a national level. If you look at Australia, England, it's usually the local regional corporations that deal with the issue rather than the overall government.
Yeah. Through you, Chair. Local government reform as viewed now as in this incarnation might result in even broadened responsibilities for regional corporations, boroughs and city corporations vis-a-vis waste. Are you all in the process of getting ready for this? I would like an answer from the PERMSEC, her view, and then from the purveyors themselves, or purveyors themselves.
With respect to getting ready at the regional corporation level in municipalities, I know my permanent secretary did present to the Honorable House already with the consultative process that has taken place with the corporations in terms of the institutional and administrative structures that have to be put in place for these devolved responsibilities. That note actually has gone before the Ministry of Public Administration. But in the interim, we have taken the proactive approach in terms of hiring persons on contract until those positions become established. Positions such as the litter wardens, and we presently have public health officers on contract to assist with respect to solid waste management. So we are taking an incremental approach to implementation, because if we wait for the whole of reform to happen, it's never going to happen. We have been attempting for the last 15 to 20 years, and we do hope that with this effort, we would achieve some incremental gains towards devolution of some of the responsibilities totally to the corporation. But we have to ensure that they have the capacity to deal with those devolved responsibilities. So in the interim, we are trying to formulate policies, etc., that would guide some of the operations, standard operating procedures to ensure that there is consistency in the approach across the corporations. But it's a work in progress. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, I would like to add to this discussion with respect to contracts and who are responsible for procuring the contracts and who are responsible for monitoring the contracts. The present contracts that are the municipal solid waste contracts that exist now has been in existence since 2013. The contracts were initially procured by the Solid Waste Management Company Limited on behalf of the government, and the contracts are to be managed between the corporations and the contractor. These contracts presently, they have expired 2016 February, and they continue on a month-to-month basis. So the corporation is responsible, to answer Dr. Henry, the corporation is responsible for the complaint you would have, or the problems you encounter in your area. Each regional corporation is responsible for monitoring these contracts.
Ms. Ram-Logan, could you just tell us what is the problem, why it's on a month-to-month basis? Because it seems to me this is a sort of essential service, garbage collection, waste collection.
Okay, Chair, I will defer to my planning officer, who has been very instrumental presently in redoing these contracts, and we are taking our time because we are addressing the existing deficiencies and gaps and problems that have been identified with respect to actually including in these contracts the area of recycling and the other new initiatives that we'd like to see happening at the corporation level. So I'll hand you over to Ms. Ramirez.
But before you do, I just want to find out about the collections, you know. Because I think, sir, you were talking about the collection of garbage alone? The contracts for the collection of garbage?
Yeah, collection and disposal, Madam Chairman.
Yes. So what he is saying is that contracts have expired and there's a month-to-month contractual arrangement for people who perform this essential service. Yes. So what I want to know is why are we now doing it after the contract has expired? Why are we now looking at the contract after it has expired?
We are not only looking at it after it expired, it was an ongoing evaluation of what was taking place on the ground, and subsequent to the termination of the expiration of these contracts, we started a consultative process with the providers, with the corporations, and also SWIMCL with a view of improving the system that we have presently. And we identified that there was a lot of problems associated with the terms and conditions of the contracts in terms of enforcement, and if there are problems and issues related to the contractors. So it took a little time because we were trying to get some really good indicators and do a comprehensive evaluation in terms of people were tendering at different corporations with the same equipment. So we came up with a multi-criteria evaluation process. So it means that we had to do a comprehensive situational analysis of the existing situation to address the deficiencies and gaps. So that's the explanation. But we have already procured, and we are presently developing the contract.
So you had, essentially what you're saying is that you had problems with the procurement process, not so much the contract.
Yes, and the contracts, the terms and conditions of the contracts.
Mrs. Ramirez Modest, perhaps you could give us very succinctly what were some of the problems encountered in these contractual arrangements.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. With respect to the contractors, some of the issues we were having with the arrangement was that too many large contractors were more or less controlling one area, we would say, and at times they would hold that area at ransom. So we look at that situation also. There were issues where one contractor would be given too many contracts, more than he is capable of dealing with. And those were more or less some of the major issues that we were looking at to rectify with this new arrangement that we are looking at. Contract-wise, the corporation felt that they were limited with their ability to actually rectify some of the situation that they were actually experiencing on the ground. Since the contracts were managed by SWIMCL, now we are looking at having the contracts being managed by the corporation itself. Those are some of the new arrangements that we are looking at. We are also looking at training the corporation with respect to contract management, so that, you know, we would be able to more or less hold contractors accountable for their performance.
Dr. Francis?
Thank you very much, Mrs. Modest. And then this leads to the obvious question, which is, does bad contracting work play any part in the tendering process? Meaning, if you have a history of performing poorly, or holding citizens to ransom, or dumping garbage on the side of the road, does that play any part in the selection process going forward? Or is it the case that we just keep recycling the same poor performers over and over?
And that is one of the things that we have. SWIMCL will be actually carrying out that procurement process first. Those are some of the things we outlined to them that we don't want. Because normally what would happen at the end of each contract, the corporation will provide a performance appraisal for SWIMCL. Those performance appraisals are being looked at as part of the evaluation in determining consideration and selection.
So I'll be very clear. It should not be the case going forward that people who have traditionally and historically performed poorly will be selected again for the same job. It should not be the case.
It should not.
Okay.
Based on what we requested.
I will remember that response.
Each of the heads, starting with Ms. Ram Logan, to just make a brief closing statement.
Thank you, Chair. Today has indeed been very fruitful and productive for us as a team, and it is indeed very encouraging to see that while we are taking initiatives at the regional level, we have adopted an incremental approach to solid waste management, and we actually were the author of that integrated solid waste management policy through a consultancy, and when SWIMCOL was transferred to public utilities, we passed that policy to them, but that was done through a consultative participatory process with the regional corporations. The ministry is committed to good governance through effective participation, collaboration, transparency, and above all, accountability. Our vision is that solid waste will be viewed as a resource and will be managed by technologies and methods that support sustainable communities and environments, that minimizes waste, promotes ecological integrity through pollution prevention, promotes efficiency, and develops resources to revitalize our local economies in these trying financial economic times. We hope to reduce our reliance on landfills, reduce the toxicity and quality of waste, conserve our natural resources and energy, improve public health while support the economy and reduce greenhouse gases. The ministry will continue to work accordingly to improve our legislative regulatory framework, our development capacity to ensure effective implementation and enforcement towards enhanced quality service and balanced sustainable development for our citizens with sound infrastructure and a healthy environment through effective solid waste management systems, processes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.